It's Friday, so that means once again I'm holding true to my promise and I'm going live with more tips. Now, today I want to talk about something that's kind of personal to me. As promised last week, I said I would touch on what's the difference between heart rate and power, and I'm absolutely going to talk about that. But there's a bigger issue here at play and why it is we need to know that. And it's something that's extremely important to me because I used to struggle all the time with race nutrition and feeling sick in all of my races and bonking. And if you check out Athlinks, which I've never actually gone on there and claimed, but you could probably capture a lot of my old results. And all the way up until 2010, I'm telling you, I threw up so many times in races. It would cause long course races. It would cause me to bonk. It would cause me to DNF. I can't even tell you how many races I used to DNF, and I used to get really anxious about doing Ironman racing because I used to feel like I couldn't have a good race until my stomach was upset, or was not upset, and I was able to control the race, and that would cause me to feel anxious. So I felt like I couldn't have a good race until I wasn't so anxious, because it got to the point where I couldn't sleep the night before. I would start getting anxiety over it. And in order to get rid of that, I had to have a good race, but I couldn't have a good race until I was able to do that. So it was absolutely a chicken or an egg type thing for me. And I had a huge breakthrough when I finally got my nutrition sorted out in 2010, which you'll see I could never break 10 hours. First of all, I used to go around 12 hours all the time, and then I got fairly okay at long course and got into that 10-hour range. And again, I'm not saying this stuff to intimidate or impress, because there's definitely a lot of people who are faster than me and some people who are slower. I'm just using mine as a reference. But after hovering around 10 hours for a long time, when I finally figured out my nutrition, I went 9:16 in Hawaii, and within a year I took off an hour at that level, and I never really went back since until I started having some heel problems, which kind of leads into I was doing some of the right things with nutrition, but I wasn't doing all the right things, and I think that's part of the reason that contributed to my heels. But if you're out there, I know a lot of people are getting ready to race Ironman Louisville or Hawaii, so this will be pertinent to you, and this will and I'll start off a little bit with the heart rate versus the power. And I know a lot of people just had some frustrating experiences that have been reaching out, and they just had that at Ironman Louisville or some other races, and I want to touch on that. So, because I know that it's really frustrating to train all year. I know that if you're like me, I used to be able to train 6-7 hour bricks and never have those issues pop up during my training days. And then I would always start to feel the GI distress creep in at around 7 to 8 hours, because that's when it starts to creep in. The problem is we just don't train that much. And you shouldn't, because the stress on the body would be too much. So, as promised, here's the difference between heart rate versus power. And if you're not sure, oh, by the way, I'm being so rude. I have my lovely, I'm so rude, yeah. I have my lovely bride, Tanya. She handles all of our nutrition with Superfly coaching.
What's up, guys?
She also runs her own nutrition program as well. She's definitely been instrumental in helping me and continues to help me. And so I'll have her chime in a minute, but I wanted to talk about the thing that I promised first, which was what's the difference between heart rate and power, and what's the difference between heart rate zones and power zones. Now, I'll get a lot of times where some people will say, should I be doing zone 3 power or should I be doing zone 3 heart rate? And technically, when you're doing zone 3 power, it should put you in your zone 3 heart rate and vice versa. So I don't get too caught up all the time in that. But what you want to consider is, if you think about your body as a machine or as a robot, heart rate is input. So that's what you're putting into the machine, right? So that's essentially how hard you're pushing on the gas pedal, or your RPMs, right? And so the output is pace or power. And so what you want to start to measure in training, in a way that you can start to track fitness, is having them measure it against each other. So you can start checking out that ratio, how much watts or how fast are you running given a specific heart rate. And so that's the difference between monitoring your heart rate and your power. It gets really beneficial when you can start managing them. A good example is, let's say you have a hill that's 5 minutes long, and at the particular part of your season you want to go out and you want to do 5 times 5-minute repeats, and so you can measure your power and you can measure your heart rate, and that's going to give you a certain ratio. And so hopefully when you train and try to get stronger, you can come back several weeks later or a couple months later, and if you do that same workout, hopefully you're producing more power for a lower heart rate or the same power for a lower heart rate. So you're effectively changing that ratio for the better. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, that's why we have our community calls, which are actually next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be a Zoom call. You have to be in our Superfly community, which you can join, but we're on there. You can ask questions if you have more specific questions about that. And this also kind of relates a little bit back to what I talked about last week when I talked about moving from date pace to goal pace, because if you're trying to make yourself more fit, then you could say, I'm going to do the next iteration of output that I would like to achieve, but I'm going to hold myself back and not allow myself to work any harder to try to achieve that. So let's just take, for example, you want to increase your power by 10 watts. So you'll say, I want to ride at that new higher power, which let's say is your zone 2, and you know your top of your zone 2 is 130, right? And you'll say, I'm going to ride that new power 10 plus watts, but I'm not going to allow my heart rate to exceed more than 2 or 3 beats over my current zone, and if it does, I need to start recovering. So if you need help structuring those, that's what we're here for, and that's what we do in our community calls. It's just too hard to touch on all those examples right now. Now, what does this mean for your GI, and how do we fix that? And here's the deal. I tell all my athletes that the blood has 3 main responsibilities. The first, and it's always going to do this in this order, and if I've talked about this, I apologize, but it's so critical to get this right if you want to go fast. First job is it's going to try to keep your core temperature cool and in check, right? Because you're essentially working out in a diseased state when you're exercising, because you're putting yourself in a depleted state, you're essentially putting yourself under a fever state, and so it's going to the surface of your skin and trying to find ways to keep your core temperature cool. That's the first thing that it's going to do. The second thing it's going to do, if it can do that, is it's going to bring blood to oxygen and energy to the working muscles. So if you can do those 2 things, now if you think about it, the harder you work, the more demand that your muscles are going to be needing, and so you're going to have it working really hard to try to cool you off and bring energy. If you add to it a race like Ironman Louisville last week that was hot environment, and you're trying to race fast, that's asking your body and your blood to do a lot of things, okay? So if it can do those 2 things, it will finally start doing the last thing that it does, which is start to digest food. So if it's having a hard time keeping up with those first 2 responsibilities, it's not going to be able to dedicate much or anything to your stomach to start to digest food, which is why it's so important to not only be eating the right things, and it can get really confusing because there's a lot of different, I used to travel to racers literally with blenders and try to mix stuff, and it was like, I mean, with all the best intentions I tried, but it doesn't have to be that hard. And I can tell you that one of the things I'm really excited about, and you can ask any of our athletes that we've worked with on this, we have a program that really, really works. If you're interested in it, email us. Well, it's too long to get into right now, or you can come on the community and talk to us about it, but it absolutely works. It's like giving you a training plan that, yes, there's some work involved, you have to do some stuff, but it's almost like, here's a plan that if you do it, you're going to get to Hawaii. So it's really exciting. But the basic thing that you want to work on, and you have to work on it now, I always say race nutrition starts with how you eat every single day. Right. You can go to a bike fitter and get in the best bike fit, but if you do that 2 or 3 days before your race, it's not a bike fit that you're used to, and it's not going to be the best bike fit no matter how aerodynamic it is. Right. So you have to start practicing your race nutrition now. And so one of the things that Tanya works with our athletes on religiously are 2 things, and I think people get confused. One is metabolic efficiency, which is thrown out there a lot, but the other is fat adaptation, right? And so I don't know if you want to touch on the 2 differences real quick, give people maybe a high level.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, just to backtrack a second, like nobody's going to go and race on race day and not train for weeks and months and days beforehand, right? So it's the same thing with nutrition. I don't know why we would think about it as being so different. So yeah, the 2 big things that I work with a lot of our athletes on is is the concept of metabolic efficiency, but then also fat adaptation. There's a lot of different terms we can throw around, and they kind of go one and the same, but essentially fat adaptation is teaching our bodies to become really good at burning fats. Most of us, because of the way we live and the things we eat and the things that are easily accessible for us to eat, are those sort of carbohydrate sugar sources, and so we've just innately taught our bodies to become really good at burning sugars as a main fuel source, right? Because the body is a creature of habit. If you do a lot of anything, it's going to start creating a habit of it. So we start to work on creating that habit of liking fats as a fuel source. The second thing that's really important to work on is the concept of metabolic efficiency. And that concept is really a broad term that can be broken down to a few different things. But essentially what it means is teaching your body to have, number one, a healthy functioning metabolism. Now that's healthy whether you're trying to do Ironman or if you're trying to just be healthy and sort of age well. The second thing that comes along with metabolic efficiency...
Wait, why did you just point at me at aging?
No, I didn't. I was counting to 3 or 2. But the second thing that kind of goes along with the concept of metabolic efficiency is trying to just teach the body in general to get good at using or utilizing what you give it and not giving it too much, so that, number one, it gets stored or just peed out. Because a lot of us think, well, whatever, right? If I have too many nutrients or vitamins, I mean, is that even possible? But it takes energy for the body to do anything, good or bad. So metabolic efficiency, sort of the third part of that, is just teaching the body, giving it just the right things that it needs so that it can use everything most effectively.
Yeah.
Does that kind of answer your question?
No, it totally does.
Too?
And back in 2010, I really dived into this metabolically efficiency, and it was a game changer for me. I can tell you from 2009 to 2010, my training didn't change all that much. Yet I dropped almost an hour from 10 to almost 9 hours. So it made that big of a difference. And so that's why we really want to work on that. And going back to your GI distress, why tying this back into that, if you're able to become metabolically efficient, you won't need to put as much into your stomach, which will allow your body and your blood to focus more on letting you race faster in the heat, basically, is what we're trying to do. Or just race faster if it's cool, because you can use your blood and that energy to do faster things, go faster, feel better, keep your core temperature, and you won't need as much fuel as you think that you need, and you won't have that. You can start to eliminate the risk of that GI distress, because let's be honest, once your stomach goes sideways, that's it. So it's really important though, because one of the things that I think I messed up early was, I know that I didn't get all the nutrients in that I needed to get in, and so I was walking around kind of in at a cellular level in an inflamed state, and going back to why I feel like I hurt my heels that way is because I couldn't ever let my Achilles get uninflamed. So Tanya's really good at figuring out all that stuff. Again, it totally works. I don't want to bore you guys with the details and gals with the details, but if you're interested, contact us. We're going to be in Hawaii next Friday. I'm going to do this even when she's doing her bike check-in. We're going to come in with another tip. We might even do a few more lives. Again, please join us. Please join us Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time in the Superfly community chat room. We're going to do a Zoom. You have to kind of be in the community so that you can get the Zoom link. You can do that at superflycoaching.com. It would help me if you previously write in your questions. I'll be armed with those answers for you, or Tanya, and we're really looking forward to chatting with all of you guys next week. So take it easy, and if you want to get a hold of Tanya, you can go to superflycoaching.com and you'll see her there too.
Yeah.
So
plug in on
awesome,
social media, guys.
Yeah, and if you're racing Ironman, Louisville coming up soon, or Kona, kick some butt, and we'll see you guys out there. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.